Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Chris Beth. I'm the director of the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Department, and I have the distinct pleasure of being the liaison to the Redwood City Arts Commission. I recognize a lot of faces, wonderful creative artists, family and friends of Cindy. I don't know whether we have 42 people. I don't think I know 42 people. So Cindy, hats off to you. This is the first. This is the first. So since COVID, I don't think we've had anything like this for the Art Kiosk. And so I want to say thank you to Cindy for doing this, and for Lance and for John Talley. Thank you for doing this, and Don for hosting this event tonight. It's great. I have to say that with the Art Kiosk, it's been something that has been open and available all through COVID. Again, thank you, Lance, and the very creative artists who have still presented wonderful displays. It's interesting, thought-provoking, creative, professional, and something that's enhanced, at least brought some sort of light to our community, and certainly to downtown. It's always available, always there, and people pop in and peep in all the time. So thank you for continuing that. If you don't know the story of the Art Kiosk, if you've been down to the Courthouse Square, Redwood City, we put on major events. We put on over 150 events throughout the year in a typical year, not a COVID year. But that kiosk, where the Art Kiosk now, used to be a storage area, and it was not used in the right way until Lance said, hey, I have a great idea. And I want to thank Lance for that vision, and for bringing that into downtown, for creating a very happy, very unique and introspective space, and to show off art. So thank you for that. Cindy, I want to just say thank you to you, a local Redwood City artist, so creative. It was great too. You were so humble, because I didn't know a lot of your background, and I won't steal your thunder, but just in terms of your science background, with that, and I'll let you explain. But I thought that was pretty incredible. Cindy has been an amazing advocate for arts, as part of Arts Redwood City, supporter of the Arts Commission and all things art in Redwood City. I've learned to quickly lean on and listen, and to gain ideas from Cindy, because she is absolutely spectacular, intelligent, and again, supporter of Redwood City. So just thank you so much, Cindy, for that. And also I don't know if Amy Buckmaster is here from the Redwood City Improvement Association, but again, they've been a major contributor, along with the Arts Commission, for supporting the Art Kiosk. Now, Cindy, I think you said Spencer Chi is here. I'm going to go through, but I want to recognize our Arts Commissioners. Yeah, Spencer, Commissioner Chi is here. Has been, again, a staunch advocate and liaison for the Arts Commission to the Art Kiosk. So just thank you for that. Again, I'm super impressed. I'm glad you're there, and I'm going to go ahead and give it back to you, or actually to Lance, or back to Cindy. But again, thank you. I want to welcome everybody. And lastly, I should say, I don't see a city council member here, but without the city council support, this actually would have never come to fruition. So for the Art Kiosk, so thank you to our city council. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Chris. And then Lance, who's our terrific curator of the whole space, is going to make some remarks. Hi, Lance. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, and we are really grateful to you in initiating a Zoom unveiling. When the pandemic hit, of course, we were all a bit caught off guard, to say the least, and notice how I'm matching her exhibition today. We were unable to gather and do our typical opening event, where the community comes out, Chris provides lots of fun food and beverages, and it's a moment for the artists to really celebrate their vision, their work, and to share it to the general public. But no one's had the bandwidth to actually pull it off. So really, Cindy, we not only appreciate, of course, your installation, but just making this one event happen. The Art Kiosk started out really humbly. It remains extremely humble. It has a shoestring budget that we are very grateful that RCIA gives us every year, along with all of the city partnership. So Chris and his team helps us maintain the space and clean the windows, and basically does absolutely everything that's possible to make it happen. Once the pandemic hit, we realized the value of the Art Kiosk. And quite frankly, right before the pandemic, we were trying to evaluate the need of the Art Kiosk and should we continue. When every single art exhibition venue closed, and many are still closed or very limited capacity, and most are having difficult financial times, we saw the value of what we first envisioned with the Art Kiosk, and that was a free exhibition space for contemporary artists that are local and national and around the world. The audience can see the work for free, day and night. And it was sort of a merge between high installation art and also public art. What we didn't envision was the real need of art during the pandemic. And so we were able to react quickly. We had to cancel a number of shows because the artists were scheduled to come in from out of town. We shifted more locally. So pretty much all of 2020 were artists from the Bay Area. And this year is the first year that we'll be bringing in some artists from out of town. Cindy's show was a labor of love. I want to introduce Cindy as an incredible artist, photographer, and friend. She's one of the first people that we met and was very supportive of our work in Redwood City through Beth's Arts Redwood City group and the monthly meeting. And so we initially bonded over just brainstorming and what if, and would this be great, and what have you. We started to follow her as an actual artist, not just a city advocate or supporter or volunteer, but we started to actually look at her artwork as an independent artist from independent to all that she does for Redwood City and the arts community. And I think the turning point in recognizing where Cindy's work as an artist stood was when John and I went and saw an exhibition of hers in San Francisco. So we had alone time. We were with a number of pieces, and we spent, well over an hour, I think, talking about the work that was presented and other bodies of work and the different arts organizations she passionately supports. And we started talking before the pandemic about an exhibition and her desire in wanting to do an installation, quasi public artwork that was made from photographs. When you look at public art, you almost rarely, if never, see a work made through photography because it's such an ephemeral or fragile material. So she started to play around with it. She sent in an official request for qualifications and proposal. And I was surprised, although I shouldn't have been, at how thorough and professional her proposal was. Complete industry standard. So that was really great. And working with Cindy is so easy because she's so hyper efficient that you don't have to do all that much. She doesn't need her handheld at all. But we had a lot of fun discussing and, basically having a private Q&A of what her work was about, how she was going to make it, what her budgetary needs were, and so forth, so on. The show before Cindy's was another surprise for us. Corey McCall is one of my students, an undergraduate student, in fact, who had never done an exhibition before and had a very ambitious story to tell and installation to create around Black Lives Matter. We were nervous of the feedback, and happily it received nothing but overwhelming positive feedback, and we need more of this kind of work. So then I thought the shift from Corey's portraiture to Cindy's would make a very interesting change, but wouldn't quite also realize the impact that her show is giving. We send out our international newsletter. We're getting emails from curators and collectors and artists from all around the world. And we are receiving just as many comments about Cindy's work as Corey's, which is a bit more topical or are prevalent in our minds. Those of us in the Bay Area, of course, are living the fear of climate change and fire prevention. We live in the forest, and we literally last week moved out our entire art collection and a lot of our personal things just for fear of something happening. But what Cindy, I think, has done is created a beautiful visual experience, whether you know what the narrative is about or not, but it triggers sort of an emotional response. That always is one of the benchmarks of a great exhibition. And then, of course, when you read her own words, which are extremely articulate, you get a glimpse into what her concerns, fears, and advocacy are about. So it's time to hear from the artist. I just want, and everyone knows Cindy, I just want to really thank Cindy for putting so much time, R&D, effort into coming up with a very unique way of working with a printed photograph through a sculptural form, and working with limited means and a beautiful and yet funky space to create a fully sort of immersive walk around sculptural installation for us. We're thrilled it's up for another month. We hope that all of you will share the word so people will continue to drive downtown and experience Cindy's work in person. It works beautifully in the daytime. My favorite time is at dusk as it turns into dark into evening. And with the programmable lights that she and Dawn figured out how to do, because that's beyond my bandwidth, it really adds a very unique kind of energy to the entire courthouse square, not just our little art kiosk. So I'm going to pass it back to Cindy to do a little bit of a description of her process and her work and do a walkabout so those who are not physically here can see the work. And then I'm sure everyone is dying to ask her a bunch of questions, but really, Cindy, from the bottom of my heart, John's, he's over there, and Mom's, he's right here. Thank you for creating such a gorgeous installation.
Thank you, Lance. I really appreciate that. And Chris as well. Can everybody hear me? Dawn, can you just tell me if you can hear me? Or someone? Lance?
Yes, I hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay. Okay. I don't want to head off and then nobody can hear me. And I assume you can see me, although that's not terribly important. So I am in the kiosk itself. I'm actually gonna, I realize I should have done this before. I'm gonna close the door in case people decide they're gonna get loud outside. There we go. Excuse me, I'll try not to make you seasick tonight. I had thought originally that I would just talk about it as I walked around, and then as I tried it, I realized I was either gonna trip over something or trip over my tongue, and neither one of which would be good. So I'm going to actually talk a little bit about the project itself, just for a brief period first, and then we'll walk around. If you have questions during that time, either just jot them down for yourself or put them in the chat, which would be even better, and we'll come to them. And Dawn's going to be monitoring the chat. So thanks for that. So first of all, thanks Lance and Chris both for your wonderful intros and all those kind words. Thank you everybody here who's come. I wish you could be here in person. It would be so much fun, although some of you I know couldn't be. My sisters from Mexico, Beth's over on the East Coast, and other people are from out of town. So at the very least, it's just nice to be able to be here even on the computer. I also want to thank the city and the RCIA and the Arts Commission for all the support that you guys give to this little kiosk. As Lance described, it really is a gem right in our downtown, and I'm really appreciative to have this opportunity. Okay, so Dawn, I've actually put some pictures up that Dawn's going to go through as I speak a little bit. You could just look at me, but that's boring. And we've got some nice nice pictures that I can give you some background on. The easiest way for me to talk about this project is actually the genesis of it, and which explains why why I did what I did and how I did what I did, because the motivation all came from that. And it started last, boy, the chat keeps coming up and I don't know how to tell it not to. Please keep chatting. Don't worry about it. But I'm realizing it's popping up. So the genesis really started with the fire season last year. And those of you in the Bay Area know that it was really awful last year. And Dawn, could you go to the next slide? Dawn, could you go to the next slide? Thank you. So many of us here have come across scenes like this, where a home or a business was wiped out, and this is up in Santa Rosa. And then, you know, there were fires really all around us last year. And even if for those of us who weren't really close to the flames and didn't really feel threatened literally by the fire itself, we were engulfed in that smoke and haze. Next slide. And it just was so awful to breathe. Next slide. And so I'm sure many of you remember the skies just looking yellowish, grayish, greenish, just for weeks. And the worst part about it is we were told stay indoors, and yet we had nowhere else to go because all we could do was go outside because of COVID. So it just really made that worse. And then finally, next slide. Everybody, I'm sure, remembers the orange day, and it just never got bright out. It never got light. We had lights on all day. Everything was orange. It was just so eerie. And it just brought everything really close to home of how threatened we were by those fires. And maybe I'm an escapist or something, but it also reminded me of the good times that we have with fire. And I started thinking, what else do we do with fire? And it made me realize, you know, most of our interactions with fire or combustion, I'm an engineer, so I think of combustion, are utilitarian. Or for entertainment and enjoyment. And so the utilitarian, you know, we all have cars, so the transportation for cooking, for heating, for hot water, all of that, that's all due to combustion, or almost all of it. Of course, we use some other energy forms. So there's just those basic interactions that we have with fire and combustion. But of course, in doing so, we're actually fueling the warming climate and the threat of wildfire that continues to grow. So there's a vicious feedback there with our modern life. It actually turns out that the rise of human civilization was significantly aided by learning to use fire for those things too. So, you know, it really goes back to prehistoric times in what fire has done for the human race and brought us to the modern age. That said, the thing I really thought about, next slide, please, was the things that are fun and really enjoyable about fire, fireworks and campfires. And this is a picture of a campfire at a lake cabin in Minnesota with my two sisters, one of their husbands. It was actually my husband and I, and then my two sisters and their husbands. And over the last few years, we have gone back to Minnesota to visit them, and we would go to a lake cabin, and every evening we would make a campfire and roast marshmallows and tell stories and reminisce and so forth. And we all associate that with something really warm. And, you know, the same thing for romance at the fireplace and so forth, right? So that's what I went to think about in the midst of that horrible fire season last year. And being a photographer as I am, of course, when we had these campfires, I had to pull out my camera and take photos of the flames. And those of you who know my photography know that I usually make abstract photos. Dawn, next slide, please. And so these were some of the photos that I had made from the flames of our campfires. And I really loved the subjects and I loved the images, but I'd never been able to print them in a way that I was satisfied with, that I would actually put them on the wall and call them fine art photographs. But I knew there was something there. So these are what I went back to last year. And then between the time I made them and last year when I went to look at them again, I learned how to make paper sculpture using techniques like folding, curving, curling, bending, crumpling. I could make paper take three-dimensional forms, and I thought that was maybe what these photographs needed. So next slide. I printed some of them and I started looking at things. I started making things like this. And for me, they were just transformed into something I really loved. And I felt like adding this dimensional form to them captured and took the image beyond just the image. And I really loved them. So now I've got this, this beautiful thing based on these photographs that I love from with really warm memories associated, but I'm living in the middle of this wildfire season that is choking everybody and having, driving people out of their homes and burning our beautiful parks and so forth. And I just felt like there needed to be a way to consider pulling those together. And so I wondered if I could make a much larger, you're seeing the color change behind me. I know I'm seeing it in my own thing. And so you're going to see that pretty soon, I promise. Anyway, I wanted to make I wanted to see if I could make something much larger that was flame-like, that captured the sort of chaotic elegance and ascension of fire, but at the same time was made from these much smaller pieces of my flames. So that's what I set about to do. Next slide. And on the left here is what I came up with within not too long a time. And I felt like, okay, I can do this. And I knew the kiosk program, and I thought this could be a really good exhibit, both for this time, for this space, but also for our community and this time. Both artistically, I thought it was very interesting. And I do love making beautiful things, but also helping, making people think a little bit based on having looked at something that was intriguing to them. I thought that was appropriate too. On the right here is a sketch that I had made that I sent in with the proposal to Lance for the kiosk, and that, as he meant, obviously we're here, so the proposal was accepted. The idea was, and you're going to see it in the larger size, the idea was to make some mosaic-like, large flame-like motifs within the space on a central scaffold that you could look at from all sides. So let me show you a little bit about how I actually went about doing that, and then we'll actually do a walk around. So next slide. There were a number of things I had to do. The most obvious one was to make a whole bunch of these sculptural photographs. So there's several hundred of them in the exhibit or on the installation. There's maybe 30 of them on the slide. Next slide. And the one thing that I didn't talk about that was actually in this proposal was I felt very strongly that there should be something in it that came from a wildfire area, either something that was burned already or that was burnable. I wasn't quite sure what that would be, but I felt like some mark making with something from a burn area seemed appropriate. Even though my flame photos could be flames from anywhere, I associate very positive memories with them. And I felt like something that acknowledged the destruction was important. And so what I ended up doing was to collect a small amount of the burned wood from the side of the road in the big basin area. And I tried various things. And what I ended up doing actually was taking it and crushing it almost like sumi ink. I'm going to call it sumi ink. It is not sumi ink, but it is crushed charred wood with a little water. And then I could paint with it with a calligraphy brush. And next slide. So I ended up making these little sketches on the backs of many of the pieces that I was inspired by the look of flames, as well as by the lines and angles of the trees and the structures in the vast areas that had burned in the CZU complex, as well as other burn areas that I've been in. And these are just a couple of them here. Next slide. I also, on the more mundane side, I had to figure out how to build the central structure that would be able to both support and be a backdrop. So there's some small models on the left-hand side, and then a 9-foot tall version in my studio on the right-hand side. Next slide. So I want to show you this because this was a happy accident that turned out to play a really big role in the installation. So I have been a photographer for a very long time making 2D art, and I put 2D art on the walls. And if anything, we don't like shadows in 2D art because they obscure something that's there. but now I'm making these three-dimensional objects and putting them on the wall. And when you light them, of course, they form shadows. And I had thought about where they would be light and dark, but I hadn't thought a lot about the shadows they would cast on the wall. And they were really, really beautiful. And I was going to light from below as footlights. And I saw that these shadows would go up. And I realized this was a wonderful addition to the overall look of this. And they change over the course of the day. Of course, these kinds of shadows are only seen at night, but earlier in the day, you see some different ones because of the sun coming in through the windows. And then on the right-hand side, the material I chose for the backdrops, for the scaffolding, it's pretty opaque, but if it's lit from behind, you get the silhouettes of the pieces on the other side. And that turned out to be really interesting and important as well. So I realized that kind of early on once I picked some materials, or was testing materials, and then I really worked it into the designs. Next slide. I think this is the last one. Oh, yeah. So just some installation photos. People always ask, how do you do it? This is a 14-foot tall ceiling up here. My banners, my backdrops are about 13.5 feet. It was quite interesting. It was quite a challenge. Attaching everything was quite a challenge. I did almost all of that part on my own, although of course I had lots of logistical help from Dawn in other ways and a couple other friends. But it was an interesting challenge. So the last slide, and I'll happy to take more questions about that, but let's do that more casually. And so the point I wanted to make with these, and just to come full circle, is that my feeling, and the reason I chose the title Close to Home, was that as you've heard me talk about, the threat of fire is the threat of fire too close to home, but at the same time, on the positive end, we use fire to comfort us both literally by heating our homes and so forth, and also to warm our hearts. And so that idea of our relationship to fire spanning all of this, it is very close to home, and it's something that we really both depend on and enjoy. But we're contributing to the warmer planet, and the way we live, the way we, how we use natural resources, where we choose to live, what we choose for instant gratification versus, the potential for disaster down the line. These are all questions that we need to grapple with over the longer term. The reason I wanted to put these pictures up here is that we are in the evening now, obviously, and you've been seeing the light change behind me. I hope that's been interesting. But you're not seeing it during the daytime. And these are just a picture showing what you would see if just the light was coming in the windows. You really see the literal sculptural photographs on the walls, on the backdrop. And it's going to be quite different as we see it now. You're going to see the full set of shadows, as well as I know you've been seeing the change in color. And that's programmed in. Happy to chat about that as well. So that's what I have prepared. What I would like to do would be please don't get seasick for a second. Close your eyes if this is going to do it. I've got to raise the monopod and to move a chair out of the way. So just give me a moment. Okay, let me move a chair. So let me just stop for a minute. Does anyone have any questions about any of that before I start walking around? Or you want me just to walk around and take questions as we talk? Dawn, maybe you can give me a feeling for that?
Hey, Cindy. One question just came in. This is, where do you plan to exhibit next?
Oh, both
exhibit
happily,
this work next.
Well, I would really love to find another place to exhibit this work, and I have. I'm going to make sure I take very careful photographs so that I can make some proposals. If you have suggestions, I am happy for those. And so I don't have a plan, but I very much would like to be able to take this to other places as site-specific variations for it. Who did that come from? I'm curious. Do you have a suggestion?
I want to see you go on the road. I would just love to see this applied to so many different areas.
Thank you.
Yeah, the interaction between is such a unique aspect of the work.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah,
I'd be
thank
really
you.
excited to see it in additional spaces, but I want to see your walkthrough right now.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm going to go out front. I'm actually out of the kiosk now.
Cindy, what did you use to attach the images to the walls? Is it pinned?
I'm going to turn you around and you're going to look at the kiosk because that'll be more interesting than looking at me. Come on.
Cindy, I'm not sure if you caught the question.
I did. I just wanted to do this
Rana?
first. Yeah, I think that was from Rana, if I recognized your voice. Yeah, they are, some of them are attached with a sticky Velcro. Most of them are attached with magnets, front and back.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, the Velcro, yes, so that's what it is. So the backdrops are actually made out of a, it's almost like an interfacing like fabric, except it's much heavier. And so it stays flat. I don't know if many people here sew, but it turns out that that was, the adhesive of a Velcro doesn't stick quite as well as I thought. I tested it for weeks and weeks, but it didn't turn out to stick as well as I would like. And so I switched to the magnets. So here you're looking at it from the front. And as you can see, the lighting changes. I'm gonna just go by angle. I'm gonna try not to make you seasick. So I'm gonna stop every once in a while just so you can see it from different angles. And the lighting changes just from a series of white, sort of a warm white, and then through some yellows and reds and oranges and reds. So this is the front of the kiosk. I'll just kind of pan you up. If I get too close, I know you can't see the whole thing. Both the front and the back views were meant to really show a fire motif. As you can see, it's very recognizable. And then the left and the right sides, I made them more abstract. I'm gonna go over there, I'm gonna go to the right side. I made them more abstract because I was interested in the one side, this right side I'm gonna show you was really inspired almost by like a firestorm. You know how when you can get, well, you can't, let me get this window open. When you get just things blowing up with the wind that's created from a fire, that was the idea here. And here's where you can really see the fact that you get the silhouettes from the backside, in addition to the actual photographs, sculptural photographs that are on the front side, that makes it really, really interesting with the lighting. Well, interesting to me anyway.
Was that planned, Cindy, as you went, as far as joining the two things together, or did you have a real idea of how these were going to interplay before you actually attached them?
There was serendipity in it. I had planned to use the silhouette coming through, absolutely. Like once I discovered that, I was like, aha, that has to be part of this because it's so interesting. And then the actual compositional part of it, that was more of a challenge because what I did was I built the front and the back side of it. Let's go to the back. And then I had to look at the two sides and say, what can I integrate it literally on what you would see on the front, like during the daytime, with what would get integrated with it from the shadows during the night. And so that was a bit of a challenge. I'm going to turn you guys vertical because you can see more of this at once. It's still kind of hard. This is the back side. So again, more of a direct fire motif here. The top of this, I'm sorry that it's so distorted on Zoom. I can only do so much and take different angles. But like I said, these are about 13 and a half feet high. Just kind of come over here.
Cindy, can I suggest you just hold for a couple seconds?
Oh, sorry.
Not moving so much.
I've seen it so many times that I'm used to just like, ooh, doo, 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 doo.
So the lighting is gone day and night, correct? It's always on, the lighting is always on during the day?
I do not have the light on during the day. There's so much light coming in through the windows that the lighting that's on right now, and which I'm blocking the direct light on these, I just want you to be able to see some of them directly. That the lighting, it basically does almost nothing because there's so much light coming in through the windows. That's why I showed you at the end of the slides, I showed you some pictures of what it looked like during the daytime.
Mm-hmm.
And we can go back to those and Dawn's got a few more pictures that we can show if anybody's interested. So that's the back side. Let me get to the fourth side. I'm now inside the kiosk, so we won't have the windows. And this one's actually kind of a smaller view. Again, here, you're seeing at night now, you're seeing a lot come through with the silhouettes. During the daytime, this is a softer and quieter side. It's more abstract. And many more of the pieces are turned around so that you see the drawings. So on most of them, on the other three sides, you mostly see the flame side. And then on this side, I wanted there to be part that included and really showed the little Sumi ink chart ink drawings. Not because I think I make great sketches, but it just felt from a topical point of view that it was important. I've got a few things on the floor here and I'll just, so like one of the things I had been inspired by were the angles of the trees. Mm-hmm. So are there more questions? I think I just saw one come up from Christine, from Chris saying, how did I do this?
I had one as well.
Sure, jump in.
It was, do you consider this project to have been kind of a next step or another stretch in growing your kind of sculptural language, you know, coming from 2D and getting into 3D? And this feels like, you know, step D or C or sorry, E.
I like that. Can I ask who's asking?
This is Panina.
Oh, hi, Panina. Yes, absolutely. And thank you for that. Yes, going into the 3D with the single piece was really interesting. And then being able to bring them together and put them in these groupings, they create something new again to me. And I find that really fascinating and really gratifying. And then of course to put, you know, many of them together makes that even more so. I would love to build like a whole room out of this, you know, and have them piled up in the middle. And I also have ideas with things for trees and water and so forth. But for now, I'll stick with the fire.
Cool.
Yeah, I think Chris had a question about Chris Oliver, I saw a question, but now I don't remember what it was. It was something about how these are made.
Yeah, Cindy, it was, how did you first learn how to shape the paper? And is the paper photographic paper? And like, did you take a class or did this just come to you?
Well, I wish it had just come to me. I'm going to do a shout out to someone else who is probably on. I think I saw Robert Cato come on. He's a mentor and a friend and a colleague of mine who's also a photographer, a wonderful photographer and teacher. And when I was doing a project now it started about 2 years ago, he said, oh, I started crumpling paper and we were doing some folding and some things. And then he said, oh, here, I got you this book. And he gave me a book that was all about folding. And most of it's folding patterns. And then there was a chapter at the back that was about 1 crease folds and 2 crease folds and point folds, meaning there's not really a fold. And the paper just curls and curves instead of folds. So for instance, I've actually got some on the ground here. Excuse me while I bend down. I'll probably make you seasick while I do this. That's not a good example. I'm here. So I don't know if you can see this reasonably. Yeah, there's one
Yeah.
fold, and then you learn to curve the paper around it. This is photographic paper. You don't have to do it with photographic paper, but it turned out because I needed to print photographs, it was useful that this particular paper actually folded and curved well. An important thing about this is when the paper gets to be a certain weight, when it's not really thin, and to keep the shape, you have to dampen it. So I dampen it from the back. So I print the photo, I trim the piece of paper, I dampen it from the back, I do any fold that's needed, I curl it, and then I either it'll stay in shape, or I use little clothespins on the fold that's here, or I prop it up. I oftentimes have things propped between like paint bottles and things like that, and then when they dry, they stay in shape. So because you can see this is like it.
Yeah.
It's not super stiff. I can make it bend.
But it's sturdy. Yeah.
It's sturdy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then it'll keep this shape. I mean, unless you get it wet again. And then but because these are photographs, and this is an inkjet photograph, my photo friends who are on are like absolutely horrified that I'm touching this thing. I'm sure. I did use a protective spray on that to protect it. I used, way more than we would use if we were going to put something behind glass.
Yeah.
So I used like 3 or 4 coats. So
fascinating. Thank you, Cindy.
Yeah. What other questions do we have? And I'm trying to think, should I go back outside, or if anybody wants me to see something different?
Do you expect these, Cindy, to hold up over time, or is this a kind of an expression of momentary art? Do you see these things surviving a long time as they are?
You mean the actual objects?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
So they're just like, they're set and strong.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, I want to, so one thing I'm doing is I showed you a few places where I just showed you just a few of them together, not necessarily in here, because this is a big installation, but I also people have told me that they love these and they'd love to have them. So I'm going to create some smaller, artworks that someone could put on one wall or one corner or something, or I'll do your whole wall for you if you want. I said something like that, and Lance was like, some people have 13-foot walls. I was like, yeah, they do, don't they? Yeah, no, these are great, and they're coated. You could, you can't dunk them in water, but you can't drop a vase on the floor either. So,
can they survive? Will light fade them?
No.
No.
Well, I mean, if you have direct
sunlight,
if you had direct sunlight on them for a long time, it could. The protective spray that I use does have UV protectant in it. And these are, being that they're in black and white, there's not a lot of color. Yeah. You're not going to lose your reds or something. I wouldn't recommend putting them directly in sun, but not forever. But yeah.
Can you clarify? You said it was photographic paper, but then you said it was inkjet paper.
Well, digital.
Okay, so it's not silver gelatin photographic paper.
No.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Other questions or comments? Or if you want me to show you something else again, happy to.
Hey, Cindy, it's David. You were asking for ideas. Hey, about 2.0 versions.
Sure.
Next gen. How about the Cantor Art Museum library lobby, and maybe making a mobile?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. That was actually one of the not a mobile per se, because those all have to be balanced, if you think of a true mobile, right? But I'm just going to back up from this, and you can kind of see what it looks like from a little further away. There's a little slideshow in the window, so just ignore that. One way, when I was trying to figure out what the central thing could be to support these, I actually thought of hanging each piece from fishing wire or some fishing line or something like that was clear, and just having a whole bunch of them in the middle of the room. And I think that could look great if you're in a room that actually has white walls or some walls around it, maybe red walls, who knows. But in this installation, you look straight through this kiosk. And if you don't have anything that gives you something behind it, what you do is you see through and you see the trees and you see the cars and you see the streetlights and you see the, you know, the mess that's out in the street, if you will. And that was going to be a real problem. And that was why I said I have to have a backdrop so that you see the pieces on the backdrop as opposed to just looking straight through this kiosk. It's because it's so busy already. Does everybody know that? Of course they don't. You don't know. I'm actually going to walk. So this is looking across the street. There's a Starbucks over there. Woohoo. There's actually a police substation over there. And these beautiful trees, or they keep these Christmas lights on. But I'll turn you around. So for those of you who aren't from the area, so here's Courthouse Square. This is to the right of the kiosk. There's some lights here that need some help here. Oh, no, that's, I think it's for, I don't know why those are blinking. Anyway, here's Courthouse Square. People hang out here. We used to have festivals here. And then as I pan here to the left, here's the kiosk. So that kind of gives you an idea of where it fits in the downtown. And then we're right on the corner. There's a street just right, you know, there's the stop sign at the corner. And so it's a really beautiful little location. A terrible use of it as a storage space that was very uninspired, Chris. And so I'm really glad that Lance and John rescued it from that fate.
Cindy, why don't you just hold on the kiosk for a couple seconds and
sure.
You can see the lights changing.
Yeah, I'll just come so that you can see more of the, you can see more of it from over here. Oops, I'll go right there. How's that?
That's the perfect view. It really looks like the, you know, the embers are blowing upwards.
That was exactly the feeling that I wanted. So I'm glad to hear it.
It's gorgeous, Cindy. Really is.
That really is amazing, Cindy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Cindy, there's a question from Kent.
Kent, hi.
Can you talk about your use of black and white photography for the installation?
Instead of color. I always forget, like, I was like, of course I made them black and white. And then I was like, yeah, but fire's not black and white. So why would you do that? You know, I make mostly black and white photos. So that's where I'd started to begin with. You saw my original photographs, a couple of them, and I rendered them in black and white. One, I just think it's very beautiful and evocative. I also like the fact that it's not literal. If I had made these from the color photographs, I feel like it would have felt like I was trying to just, you know, reproduce a fire. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to give the gesture and the feeling and the emotion of the fire. And so I even debated about the color lights. I kind of was like, is this too literal? Is it too cliche or something? And I decided to do it after some talking with Lance. And, but that was why, besides the fact that I simply love black and white photographs. But I think the really graphic nature of it is very, it really captures the view. It's really great on this corner. Some of the exhibitions that have been in the space, while if you got close up, looked really great. If you were very far away at all, you basically couldn't see anything was in. And this really captures your attention even from across the street. So I think it's been very effective from that point of view for this space. And this was a site-specific installation. The God's honest truth, Kent, is that I like black and white photographs. Other?
It's lovely, Cindy. This is Zareen.
Hi, Zareen. Thank you for joining. I didn't see you earlier on. I honestly am not quite sure who all is on. So, you know, at this point, I can't see all of you. I'll just move over. We were there for a while, so how about if I just move over here?
While you're moving, I'll make a comment to Rana. You know, Rana, in helping Cindy make this, you asked about the paper. It's really a heavy craft weight paper. I don't know if it's 150 pounds or 170. Maybe Cindy can answer that. But it's a very, you know, stiff paper. So yeah, this is a solid, all solid pieces. I dropped one a couple times and Cindy said, "Oh, don't worry about it."
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, I had this, that was actually, it's an interesting point though. I'm gonna, you know what I'm gonna do is I'll, well, no, that's all right. Well, there you go. There you can see me. Hello. I can put myself in it that way by having my shadow. Rana, you actually get at an interesting point though. This is the first true installation art I've made. In other words, you know, I've made, of course, many pieces of art, mostly photographic, for exhibition and for sale, and have in my own home, where, you know, I frame them, I put them on the wall, or I somehow finish them and I put them on the wall, but they're individual pieces of art or bodies of work. Whereas this is, you know, an installation that's made from many pieces of what would normally have been a piece of art. So there's, you know, from that point of view, there's like 300 of them in here, probably around 300. And it makes you very practical. And so the paper I chose, this was not a super expensive paper. This was not a really precious paper. It was a pretty run-of-the-mill, I don't want to say run-of-the-mill, it's a quality, but the ones that are in here are not like a massively high quality paper, but it is archival and so on and so forth. And it happened to be a really good weight to be able to do the folding, do the curving, hold the curves, because if it was a lighter paper, they start collapsing. If I make these out of really light paper, they do just collapse because they can't hold that shape. If it's a really heavy paper, when you fold it, the fold breaks. You know, it tears at that fold. So there's these middle weight papers, which is what this is, that allows it to both fold well and hold the shape well, and be sturdy over time. But I had to get over this, you know, handling, because I had to handle them. I had to get over, you know, putting them in bins together because I just had to. I couldn't take each one of them and act like they were that archival piece behind glass that was going to go on, you know, one person's wall. Now that said, in making them for individual people, you know, or smaller groups of them, you know, those I can, you know, will handle in a way that would not have, if I look at a lot of these, they're going to have some wear and tear on them, but in the larger installation sense, it doesn't matter. You can't see it. And that's just the way an installation is. Oops. Let's go to another side just because we can. I have no idea what time it is. So if anybody.
About 9 o'clock.
Okay, so we're getting close to
8:58.
time to finish anyway. Are there any last questions that anyone has?
Cindy, this is Shelley. I just
Hey,
want to tell
Shelley.
you how much fun it is for me to see what you did with all those thousands of photographs. So I had the pleasure of poking the logs in the fire that created sparks while she was taking photographs on our family vacation. And my husband kept saying, "What in the world is she taking pictures of?"
Yes, for anybody who hasn't figured out, this is my sister Shelley speaking. Yes, exactly.
It was, you know, I mean, I understood, but to see it come to life and to see it in a sculptural form is just sweet.
It's brilliant.
Really
Brilliant.
fabulous, Cindy.
Thank you,
Really.
Shelley.
Yeah.
Thank you. Really
You,
appreciate all
you
that.
certainly have found a new voice, Cindy.
Right.
Thank
yeah.
you, Rana. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well,
It's been
you-
lots of fun.
It's
Glad I could
taking
join
me,
you
it's
for
taking me to
forward.
my roots, Cindy.
What was that last comment?
I said it's taking me to my roots because fire is the symbol in our religion.
Yes, Serene. Actually, that was one thing I didn't talk about, but it is interesting how fire and flame are central symbols in so many, both religion, myth,
A lot of cultures.
a lot of culture, popular culture, literature. And the interesting thing to me is how varied it is too, because fire is a symbol for everything from destruction to purity and purification.
Purity.
So You know, the wind is starting to blow through here, and so I'm going to need to start closing things before this tears this place down. Are there
Cindy,
any?
This is Getta. I love seeing it all together like this, having seen pieces of it, you know, when we've met.
Yes, Getta, I really appreciate that. So sorry if I'm trying not to make anyone seasick. Jim's gonna come get the window. Thank you, Jim. And so, are there any last questions or comments? Otherwise, it's probably time to let everybody go. For me, I would just say thank you so much for coming. And if you haven't seen it in person and you're anywhere local, you know, just pop on by. The parking down here is actually still quite easy, which is great. And it's open through the end of May, well, May 30th. So the 31st, I start taking it down, or I take it down. And parking's still easy down here. Caltrain comes a couple blocks away if you're not super local and want to take the train. So maybe I'll put my face back on here so I can actually say hello. So anybody
Cindy,
else?
When we come see it, can we walk in the kiosk or just see it from the outside?
Ah, good question. You can only see it from the outside. So if you want to meet me down here, I'm happy to meet you, and don't tell anyone, but I can let you in. I have a key. But I can't have a big reception. I can't have a whole bunch of people come at once. But if you let me know when you're coming and it's good, I'm happy to come down and meet. It's 10 minutes from my house and 5 minutes from my studio. So anybody who'd like to, I'm vaccinated now, yay. And in about a week, I'll be quite happy to meet other people, especially who are vaccinated. And I may even just come down one Saturday and just be here. But otherwise, you can see it from the windows from all four sides. And if you get up close, you really can see everything, and you get out of the way of all the little squares.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Gitta. So appreciated.
Hey, Cindy,
Beautiful, Cindy. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Cindy.
you.
Wonderful.
Just wonderful.
Thanks, Shelley.
Great.
So glad. Go to bed, Shelley.
I like
Adios.
watching you set it up, and it's great to see it now that
Yeah, thanks, Beth. You came down.
before,
Oh,
and-
you know, I also, one last group of people to thank, because I don't think I thanked them in the beginning, was just all my artist friends and a few other personal friends, even who aren't artists. People helped me in so many different ways, from talking about materials, just various solving, ways of solving problems and whatever, even all the way back to making the proposal. So all of you know who you are. Thank you so much. There's probably been 20 different people who've given me some idea here or there. And I really, really appreciate it, as well as a little bit of work in actually construction inside. So thank you.
Bravo.
Okay, good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.